At 8:42 a.m. local time, somewhere in the Caribbean Sea, the radar screen looks ordinary at first. Most of the contacts are exactly what the crew expects to see. Distant commercial traffic, slow-moving vessels following familiar routes, nothing unusual, nothing that requires immediate attention. Then, almost at the same moment, 8 new surface contacts appear. They do not show up gradually. They arrive together, spread out just enough to look organized rather than random. The radar operator pauses, then zooms in on the display. Each contact holds a steady course. No AIS. No identification signal, no civilian profile. 8 vessels moving quietly with no electronic signature. The officer of the deck steps closer to the console. In this part of the Caribbean, small boats are common. Patrol craft are not unexpected. But 8 vessels appearing together, all without identification, is different. It does not create alarm yet, but it absolutely demands attention. Mark and track, comes the order at 8:44 a.m. Within minutes, the contacts are assessed by their speed, spacing, and radar return. They are not large frontline ships, but they do not match ordinary civilian traffic either. Their outlines suggest patrol-type naval vessels. Their formation is not tight, but it is not random. It looks practiced, it looks intentional. Outside, the sea still appears calm. No dramatic movement, no visible smoke, no obvious signal from the other vessels. From far away, it would look like nothing more than a U.S. Navy ship moving steadily through international waters beneath a clear sky. But inside the ship, the atmosphere changes. Not into panic, into focus. By 8:46 a.m., long-range optics are brought online. The camera feed confirms what radar has already suggested. Gray hulls, sharp angles, naval paint, Venezuelan naval vessels, 8 of them, spread across a wide area, approaching from different directions and gradually closing the distance. No radio call, no warning, no acknowledgement. That silence matters. At sea, communication is more than courtesy. When military vessels operate near one another, there is usually some kind of contact. A radio hail, a signal, a basic exchange to establish intent. Silence leaves room for interpretation, and interpretation is where tense situations can begin. At 8:48 a.m., the first hail is transmitted over open channels. No answer. A second hail follows moments later, clear, professional, and measured. Still nothing. The 8 Venezuelan vessels maintain course. Their speed is not high, but it is steady. They are not rushing forward, and they are not drifting aimlessly. They are moving with purpose. And every mile they close makes the situation more serious. Inside the command center, analysts begin calculating closest points of approach. If none of the vessels changes course, several will pass well inside normal safety margins. Close enough to send a message, close enough to test the response. This does not look accidental. At 8:51 a.m., one of the Venezuelan vessels makes a subtle course change. Just a few degrees. Almost invisible to the eye, but clear on radar. That small adjustment places it on a more direct path toward the projected route of the U.S. Navy ship. It is the first real move. Not strong enough to force an immediate reaction, not harmless enough to dismiss. The captain is briefed in short, precise language. 8 vessels. No AIS. No response to hails. One vessel adjusting closer. All actions recorded. Cameras active. Operating guidelines unchanged. Maintain course, the captain orders. Continue documentation. The ship does not turn away. It does not increase speed. It does not slow down. Professional restraint is not weakness, it is control. And at sea, control is power. By 8:55 a.m., the Venezuelan formation becomes unmistakable. The vessels are no longer simply approaching. They are positioning. The angles tighten. The spacing begins to make sense. What looked scattered at first now forms into something deliberate. A message does not need to be complete to be understood. It only needs to be clear enough. No one crosses the final line. No alarms ring out across the deck. But the calm of the Caribbean has changed. Something began at 8:42 a.m. when those 8 contacts appeared on radar. And now every move will determine how far this encounter goes. By 9:03 a.m., the pattern is impossible to miss. What started as 8 distant radar contacts has become a coordinated formation. The Venezuelan vessels are no longer holding simple parallel tracks. One by one, they adjust their headings with small, careful movements. Each change looks minor on its own. Together, they reveal the larger picture. The U.S. Navy ship now sits at the center of tightening geometry. Not fully boxed in, not yet, but clearly being pressured. On the radar display, the contacts spread into a wide arc. 2 vessels move along the starboard side, holding a steady distance. 3 others ease into position off the port quarter. The remaining vessels stay slightly farther back, giving the formation depth. It is a classic pressure posture. Limit options, test reactions, and send a signal without pushing too far. At sea, distance is a language. And now, that language is becoming impossible to ignore. The bridge crew monitors every change in bearing. Every slight shift in speed is recorded. Every closest point of approach calculation updates in real time. And the numbers are moving in the wrong direction. If no one changes course, at least 2 Venezuelan naval vessels will pass inside 2 nautical miles. Close enough that intent begins to matter more than routine procedure. At 9:06 a.m., another radio call is sent. Calm, clear, professional. No answer. By now, the silence feels deliberate. Long-range cameras zoom in even farther. The image becomes sharper. Crew members are visible on several Venezuelan vessels. Helmets on, personnel gathered near railings and forward sections. No stations appear to be actively engaged, but the posture is unmistakably alert. Ready, watching. Inside the Combat Information Center, analysts quietly record the details. This is not a simple patrol crossing paths at sea. The vessels are holding formation too carefully. Their spacing is too consistent. Their movements are too coordinated. These crews know exactly where they are, and they know exactly who they are approaching. At 9:09 a.m., a small but important change takes place. One Venezuelan vessel increases speed by just 2 knots. On its own, that would mean very little. In this context, it says a lot. The ship edges forward from the formation, reducing the open space along the U.S. Navy ship's projected route. The circle tightens. Still, the U.S. ship does not maneuver. Changing course now could be read as a message. Slowing down could look like uncertainty. Speeding up could raise the temperature of the encounter, so the safest move is also the most disciplined one. Stay steady, hold course, hold speed. The captain repeats the order. Professional restraint is not passivity, it is calculation. At 9:12 a.m., electronic sensors detect the first active emissions. A low-power surface search radar comes from one of the Venezuelan vessels. It is not a targeting quality track. It is not an immediate danger, but the encounter is no longer purely visual. They are now actively scanning the U.S. ship. Every signal is logged, frequencies are recorded, power levels are measured, nothing dramatic happens. But every detail adds weight to the bigger picture. This is controlled pressure carried out just below the point where the situation would clearly change. From the bridge wing, binoculars confirm what the sensors are already showing. The Venezuelan vessels are closer now. Hull numbers are visible. Flags move in the wind. There is no confusion about nationality, no confusion about where either side is operating. Both sides know exactly who is present. At 9:15 a.m., the formation settles into place. 8 vessels now sit in a loose semicircle, all within visual range. No ship crosses directly in front of the U.S. Navy vessel. No one cuts across the bow. The movements are too precise to be accidental. Pressure without a clear final step. This is the gray zone. The captain receives an updated brief. Closest contacts are now inside 2 nautical miles. Multiple vessels are maneuvering in coordination. There is no direct action, but there is a clear attempt to limit room to maneuver. Operating guidelines remain unchanged. The decision is simple, but not easy. Push back too hard and a show of force could become something far more serious. Turn away and the pressure is rewarded. Hold steady and the other side must decide how far it is willing to go. The U.S. Navy ship holds steady. By 9:18 a.m., the encounter has drawn a line across the water. 8 Venezuelan naval vessels have tested that line without fully crossing it. The loose encirclement is now in place. The silence remains unbroken, and whatever happens next will not come from accident or drift. It will come from choice. At 9:21 a.m., the encounter changes again. On the radar screen, 2 Venezuelan vessels begin to accelerate. The increase is gradual at first, 3 knots, then 4. But the pattern is clear. Their headings shift together, narrowing the angles toward the bow of the U.S. Navy ship. This is no longer just a passive show of presence. It is an intentional tightening of space. Inside the Combat Information Center, the reaction is immediate. Closest point of approach calculations update again. This time, the numbers move into cautionary territory. One contact is projected to pass inside 1 nautical mile if neither vessel changes course. That distance matters. At sea, 1 nautical mile is not immediate danger, but it is close enough to force fast decisions. Close enough that every movement carries meaning. At 9:23 a.m., the bridge sends another hail. This one is firmer, direct, repeated in English and Spanish. The wording is carefully chosen to remove any uncertainty about position, legal status, and expected behavior. Still, there is no reply. Instead, 1 Venezuelan vessel changes heading by a few more degrees, moving closer to the projected path of the U.S. Navy ship. The maneuver is smooth, controlled, practiced, and clearly deliberate. It is the kind of move designed to draw reaction without forcing an immediate formal response. The bridge crew watches in silence as the geometry tightens. Log the maneuver, the captain orders. Continue recording. By 9:25 a.m., sensors detect a second active radar emission. Another Venezuelan vessel briefly shifts from passive monitoring to active scanning, sending low-power pulses across the area. Not a targeting-grade signal, but no longer harmless either. They are testing the edges of the situation. Electronic specialists record the frequencies and durations. Every emission is captured, time-stamped, and stored. This is no longer just about understanding what is happening in the moment. It is also about creating a clear record, something that can show intent if the encounter becomes more serious later. On the horizon, the Venezuelan vessels are now close enough for individual movements on deck to be seen. Sailors shift positions. A small group gathers near a forward deck mount on one vessel. The station is not actively crewed, but the message is visual. Pressure without contact. Intent without crossing the final line. At 9:27 a.m., the captain brings senior watch officers together on the bridge. The assessment is brief and direct. Vessels. 2 maneuvering more assertively. Multiple active radar emissions. No communication. No forward systems actively operated. The operating rules remain clear. There has been no direct action that would justify a stronger response. But there is also no reason to give way. Prepare aviation option, the captain says. The order moves through the ship quietly but with purpose. Below deck, the flight crew begins working with practiced efficiency. There is no alarm, no disorder, no sudden rush. This is not an emergency launch. It is a calculated increase in presence, a signal that can be seen, recorded, and understood without a single shot. At 9:30 a.m., the Venezuelan vessel nearest the bow increases speed again. The closest point of approach drops further. Now it is less than a mile. The wake behind its stern grows longer, white water carving sharp lines across the blue Caribbean surface. The message is impossible to miss. Inside the Combat Information Center, a voice cuts through the tension. Contact maneuvering with intent. That phrase matters. It is not a declaration that the situation has fully escalated, but it is one of the final steps before stronger protocols begin. On the bridge, the captain watches the approaching vessel through binoculars. He does not raise his voice. He does not give any dramatic order. Instead, he waits one final moment, giving the Venezuelan crew every chance to adjust course. They do not. At 9:32 a.m., the decision is made. Launch the helicopter. The order is calm, final. This is the line. Not a strike, not a threat. A presence that cannot be ignored. As the ship continues on the same course and speed, the flight deck comes alive. The rotors begin to turn. Their sound cuts through the still Caribbean air and carries across the water toward the Venezuelan formation. For the first time since 8:42 a.m., the silence breaks. Not with words, with a message no one can misunderstand. The encounter has moved from quiet pressure into open signaling. And now the next move belongs to the air. At 9:34 a.m., the helicopter lifts from the deck. Its rotors slice through the warm air, sending ripples across the sea below. The sound travels farther than any unanswered radio call, and every ship in the Venezuelan formation hears it. This is not a rushed launch. There is no confusion on deck, no frantic movement. Every action is controlled, deliberate, and meant to be understood. The aircraft climbs to a low operational altitude and moves forward, angling toward the tightening arc of Venezuelan vessels. From the bridge, the captain watches in silence. The U.S. Navy ship holds course. Speed remains unchanged. Nothing about its posture suggests fear. Nothing suggests retreat. The message is quiet, but clear. We are not moving. You are. At 9:36 a.m., the helicopter crosses the forward edge of the Venezuelan formation. Not directly overhead, not in a provocative line. It passes offset, wide enough to avoid creating a sudden flashpoint, but close enough that no one can ignore it. Its sensors are already active. Electro-optical systems focus in, stabilizing on hull numbers, deck crews, and bridge windows. Everything is being recorded. Inside the helicopter, the crew works calmly. The pilot holds a steady path. The sensor operator calls out bearings and distances. Video feeds stream back to the ship in real time, time-stamped and geo-referenced. This is not intimidation. It is documentation. At 9:38 a.m., the aircraft slows and enters a controlled orbit near the most assertive Venezuelan vessel, the same one that had closed inside a mile and the first to shift onto a more direct line. From above, the difference in posture is impossible to miss. On the Venezuelan deck, crew members look upward. Some raise their hands to block the sun. Others point toward the aircraft. A few move back toward the superstructure. The helicopter changes the situation immediately. Ships contest angles. Aircraft remove uncertainty. A calm warning is broadcast from the helicopter. The tone is neutral. The wording is professional. No one raises their voice. This is a United States Navy aircraft. You're operating unsafely in international waters. Alter course immediately. The message is then repeated slowly and clearly in Spanish. For the first time since the encounter began, there is visible hesitation. At 9:41 a.m., the nearest Venezuelan vessel reduces speed. Not sharply, not dramatically, but enough for its wake to shorten. The closest point of approach begins to widen. Another vessel, positioned farther out along the arc, starts drifting back and increases distance by a fraction of a mile. Small changes, but real ones. The helicopter keeps its orbit. It does not chase. It does not move directly overhead. The pressure comes from presence, not pursuit. Its cameras continue recording every adjustment, every course change, every visible shift on deck. Back aboard the U.S. Navy ship, the Combat Information Center updates the captain. Contact 1 reducing speed, Contact 3 increasing range. No additional active radar emissions. The formation is loosening. At 9:44 a.m., a brief radio transmission breaks through the static. For the first time, Venezuelan naval call signs are heard. The message is not directed at the U.S. ship. It is internal coordination, short exchanges, repositioning instructions, adjustments within the group. They are recalculating. The helicopter widens its orbit, now visible to the entire formation. Its silhouette hangs against the bright Caribbean sky. Unarmed, controlled, but impossible to ignore. Everyone in the area understands what it represents. Not just one aircraft, but the larger capability behind it. At 9:47 a.m., the most forward Venezuelan vessel changes course. Only a few degrees, but enough to break the direct intercept line. Enough to show a decision has been made. Then others begin to follow. The arc opens. Distances grow. What looked moments earlier like a tightening ring now starts to stretch and thin. There is no announcement, no formal statement, no explanation, but the movement says everything. The helicopter remains overhead until the shift is clear. At 9:50 a.m., the aircraft turns back toward the U.S. Navy ship. Its rotors tilt forward. Speed increases slightly. The message has been delivered and received. From the bridge, the captain gives a single nod. The turning point has passed. No force was used. No dramatic orders were needed. But the direction of the encounter has changed completely. Not through panic, not through overreaction, through controlled escalation. The pressure that began on the surface has now been reversed from above, and the final outcome is no longer uncertain. By 9:52 a.m., the encounter is no longer evenly balanced. The helicopter returns to the flight deck with smooth precision. The rotors slow. The deck crew secures the aircraft. From the outside, it looks routine, just another launch and recovery under clear Caribbean skies. But everyone aboard understands what just happened. The momentum has shifted, and it has shifted decisively. On the radar screen, the Venezuelan formation continues to change shape. The tight arc that once pressed inward is dissolving. One vessel increases its lateral distance. Another falls farther back, reducing speed below the rest of the group. The most assertive vessel, the one that had closed inside a mile, now holds a steady heading that no longer interferes with the U.S. ship's path. No apology comes over the radio, no explanation is offered, none is needed. At sea, movement is communication. At 9:55 a.m., the captain orders a final status review. All contacts remain visible, but their behavior has changed. They are no longer trying to restrict movement. They are watching. Passive radar only. No further active emissions. No course changes aimed at intercepting the U.S. ship. The message has been received. The U.S. Navy ship does not alter course. It does not slow down. It does not accelerate to make a point. Instead, it continues exactly as it had before. Steady speed, steady heading, disciplined posture. That is the quiet expression of control. Changing course now would suggest that the pressure had worked. It had not. From the bridge wing, the Venezuelan vessels are still visible on the horizon, but the distance is increasing. Their wakes no longer angle inward. They now trail away from the U.S. ship, stretching across the water in separate directions. The formation is no longer coordinated. What had once looked like a single organized movement is now becoming individual vessels making individual choices. At 9:58 a.m., one Venezuelan ship moves farther south. Another turns slightly west. The remaining vessels stay behind at a greater range, still visible, but no longer close enough to shape the encounter. The pressure formation is over. Inside the Combat Information Center, analysts finish their logs. Timelines are secured, video files are archived, radar tracks are saved. Every maneuver, every sensor signal, every course adjustment is preserved with timestamps and coordinates. This is more than a routine summary. It is a complete record. Encounters like this rarely end with a dramatic final moment. They end with documentation. At 10:02 a.m., the captain receives the final update. No contacts maneuvering with intent, no active emissions, no current safety concern. Maintain normal operations, he orders. And that is all. No announcement, no celebration, no dramatic closing line. The ship continues on, but the meaning of what happened remains. 8 Venezuelan naval vessels attempted to apply pressure without crossing into open confrontation. They tested distance. They tested silence. They tested coordinated movement. They pushed until the line became clear. Then they stepped back when the response made further pressure too costly. This is how modern naval confrontations often unfold, not through chaos, but through calculation. Not through noise, but through restraint. What happened in these waters was not weakness. It was control, shown quietly. The U.S. Navy did not need to overpower the other side to make the point. It only needed to show that it would not yield, would not overreact, and would not be pushed away from a lawful course. That combination, discipline, patience, and capability, can be harder to challenge than strength alone. As the Caribbean settles back into calm, the Venezuelan vessels fade into the distance. Their presence becomes smaller, radar returns. Their wakes soften behind them. The blue water closes over the moment as if nothing happened. But the lesson remains. In international waters, control does not belong to the loudest voice or the closest ship. It belongs to the side that knows when to hold steady, when to signal clearly, and when to make the other side reconsider without losing control of the situation. And this time, that is exactly what happened.